Today I'm going to walk around our garden and share with you 7 tips why it's a good idea to photograph your garden from time to time. I generally photograph our garden twice a year, just doing a quick walk around, taking photos of every angle that I can think of, because I like to just keep a record of it, and doing so in the end of the wet season that it is now, and also around the end of the dry season. These are the times when the changes are most noticeable. So I do like to come and just record these things as a matter of habit. So there's the first tip. Photograph your garden regularly. Choose a number of times during the year. Like I said, I do mine twice because that's significant here in Northern Thailand. It may be that you want to include a few other times. Maybe you want to do it 4 times a year. Depending on where you live, the seasonal changes, this might be quite helpful. So what I'm looking for is just to really document what's happening in the garden, and in particular the changes that have taken place. And although I do have quite a collection of cameras, for this task I use my phone because it's just easy and practical. And what I'll often do is record panorama photos of the scene. So I'll set my mobile phone up to take a panorama photo and then start at one end. So this is up the front of our section, so I'm starting at the north side and just slowly panning around to capture the whole front of our section. And then just tap it again to turn it off. And I find that having a collection of single images and panorama images, where the phone is going to stitch these together and just give me a single very wide image, it's going to actually show me what's going on from a wider perspective as well. So it's really helpful to get those very, very wide angle images, and this is where your phone comes in really handy, because it's generally easier to do a panorama with a phone. I know a lot of cameras these days do have a panorama feature built into them, but I find it's pretty easy to do it with your phones. So that just makes things a bit easier. So then I'll also have a good look at other things that we've done, in particular where we've got new plantings or new prunings. And so this whole area through here, we pruned it probably 2 months ago, and it's really started to come back to life again. It's really starting to show great, amazing growth, really. So I will look to record some of that. And the other thing that we've done down here is we've got quite a lot of planting in there. So that's the king's grass that's coming along nicely, and I will want to make sure that I've got a record of that as well. So I will come in closer up, get my shadow out of the picture, and this time instead of doing a panorama, I'll just do a regular type of photo, and getting closer in to show some of the detail of how well those little grass slips have started to grow nicely. So that's very cool. So that's just the very front, but in here also we've got some of the herbs and a few other things. This plant here, I can't remember the name, but this is one that my mum bought me when she came to visit. She likes that one, so she gave us that. And yeah, I'll just find different angles to really show off what we're seeing in the garden, what we've planted, and how it relates in the location that it is, how it relates to the buildings, our home. And this is our family house up here. That is some of our guest rooms. And so back here, typically we haven't had anything much planted. It's been a bit of a jungle up here, but Pamsa's recently planted a lot of her Thai herbs up here. So I want to be able to capture those. And here is another good situation, because I've got a fairly broad sort of a view here. It's not very wide, but the best way to photograph it is going to be, again, with another panorama. And with a panorama, it doesn't have to be particularly long. sometimes it just is a better thing to use your phone to capture a wide or even a tall panorama of any particular scene. And then further back here, we've got our water tanks, and it's just a bit of a jungle at the moment, but I want to record that, see what's going on. This area here can be a little bit problematic during the rice growing season because it gets pretty wet. We'll just go back to a regular photo there, just to show those. Just quick, nothing fancy. I have taken a lot of photos in my day. That's what I did for work when I was working my career. I was a photographer, lots of different genres, but documentary photography was one of the most important things and the most enjoyable things that I did. And when I'm coming to take photos here, the thing that I'm concentrating most on is not getting fancy photos, not making them look really pretty or anything like that, but just to make them really clear and really easy to see the changes in the garden. So I'm thinking about what I'm photographing and how I'm photographing it so that it's just clear to see, rather than making it a pretty picture with a nice blurred background or anything like that. Not so interested in that, but I might come back and do some of that later on if I notice things as I'm walking around the garden. One of the other key things that I make sure to do is that any new plantings, any areas that we have recently planted or any areas that we've recently pruned back, I want to document these, because then that can help us have a better idea of the growth and how our garden is changing over time. So this is the second tip. As you photograph your garden, be thinking of what you've recently planted and what you've recently pruned, because these are the two situations that are going to have the most change in between this time you photograph and the next time you photograph. So here again, I'll do another panorama. This time I'll go from left to right, and it helps me really get that height in these trees here as well, which is important. I'll go right around to the family house there, because as we've worked a lot on these trees, when my brother was here, we've cut a lot back from here and actually cut a lot out from just down below as well. So we'll walk down here at the moment and have a look in this area here, because this area here looks significantly different than it did a few months ago, because we've taken out a couple of larger trees and we've trimmed a bunch of other trees, so it's really opened up this side of the house a lot. And then yesterday my lovely wife had our helper come through and clear out this whole area through here that had come quite overgrown with weeds, and we'd had a couple of plants in there that just were not in the right location, so she's got those shifted and it's looking really nice. So I want to document that again with a panorama while it's looking so nice. And I love these tall spiny plants that we've got in the front of the house. They contrast nicely with the cement scrub. So I'll do one there because it's just about that wall, and then I'll do another one here. Yeah, I think I'll do a panorama again. So kind of starting from where I left off, and then again panning around to capture that bank and what's there. And then I might do one more, just angled up slightly, so I'm looking up at the trees and can see how much more open that is up in that higher area up there that before was completely shaded in. So that's given us a few good photos of the front of the house and the front area here, but I will come through here as well and have a look down in this area, because we have planted some other little plants in here. I haven't paid much attention to them, but this is a part of the garden that we were looking at putting as a shade garden. So we're wanting to really be able to plant some ferns and some other plants down here that will enjoy being in the shade. And it keeps fairly shaded at the moment, but not as much as it did previously because, as I said, we'd done a lot of pruning, but they're looking all right. Looks like I need to come and cut the grass a bit more here too. It's a continuing challenge for me, keeping on top of that. And so now I'll come around the side to where our bamboo is, and I think I'll just grab a couple of frames from this angle. I don't often see it from this angle because it's I put my phone in my pocket. Something's happening here. My camera's come a bit loose. That's a bit better. Okay, now we'll come around the side of the house, photograph the bamboo from this angle as well, because this is it's taken a while to get established, but it's looking really nice now. I'm really happy with it. I think I'll take another panorama here because I want to show the location. I want to show that it's fairly close to the family house, because this is an area that we're wanting to provide a bit of a screen so there's a bit more privacy when people are sitting up there on the porch at the family house, and the panorama helps me do that. So just a fairly small, short panorama there. And then we'll come back up here to the front of the family house, because again this is another area that has just been pruned recently. I pruned it just the other day. I'd started to do some pruning and was planning on doing just a little bit, and my wife saw me out with the saw and she said, come on, we need to prune these trees up here and to open up this area. These the same type of tree that's down in the front lawn, and they grow crazy quickly, so it's important to keep a track of those and keep a check on those, because they grow so rapidly and just make too much shade. And in this area here particularly, we don't want it hanging over our neighbour's rice field, because that's going to shade the rice too much for him. And we want it to be able to bring enough light into the front of the family house here, and to also let the airflow come through, which is really nice. And with it opened up too, it's going to allow people to really enjoy the view out there. And while I'm here, I will take another few frames or a panorama or two looking in this direction. So to show the frangipani here, and then the bamboo from this angle, the king's grass there, the other frangipani. So we've got a good record of this area now. And then as we come through back down here, this is actually somewhere that I have photographed fairly frequently from in the past, because it gives us a good view back to our garden. So I'll just get out here in our neighbour's land a little bit and can capture a fairly good view of the whole house. Before we had so much garden, we could see the whole house quite clearly from this angle, but now it's wonderfully obscured by the trees. Not completely, but certainly enough. And so from this angle, coming back to the same location and capturing the same angle from different times of the year and different years, then you get to see a real progress of how your garden is growing and how it's changing, and the differences from season to season and from year to year. So we'll come back across here, because this is another angle that I've taken in the past that I want to do again today, and this is showing more of not so much the garden but the front of the house. And again, a panorama image is going to be the best way to capture it. So just slowly moving around, using a panorama, using your phone to take a panorama like this. It really is pretty easy, but it's getting a very smooth and a very level movement to your phone. So you don't want to be angling it up or down or anything like that. You want to keep it, follow the horizon as carefully as you can. Don't move too quickly, don't move too slowly. Most phones will give you a graphic as to what's happening. You can kind of get an idea of what's happening as you're making the panorama. So it's really pretty easy to see. And then one of the other tips that I want to share with you about why it's important to keep a track of your garden by taking photos of it every so often is that you can have a look and document the health of your plants, and you can see how they're looking and how they're faring from season to season. And so down here we have got quite a few of our desert roses, our adeniums. So just angle that camera down a little bit so you can see that, and then I'm going to document these because they're not in an ideal situation. We've got them here because we've got so many of them, and it's important to just have a look, especially when we know that they're not in the best location. So this will give us a documentation of their situation just after the wet season. So they usually don't like so much rain, these plants, because they're succulents, but this year we haven't been able to keep them all under the cover away from the rain. So just by documenting a few, capturing some of them that definitely look like they could be healthier, others seem to be quite fine. But so long as we're capturing them in some photos, then we can have just that record of how they're doing at the end of the rainy season and what they're looking like, and then we can know again next year if it is a good location to be planting them here. So this area here too, we've opened up quite a lot when we did the big pruning. So I will come back down this side, so we're back down near the boundary with the rice fields, and again I'll take a couple of regular photos. Doesn't require a panorama there, and that gives us a good idea. And then just here down the same level now as our pizza oven, I will take a couple of images because I've made a significant change just here recently. We had two of these trees and I moved one of them because it was just in the wrong location. So again, it's going to be panorama time to show this one that's looking quite healthy, and then the space where the other one was and where it is in relation to the pizza oven. So this brings up another good photography point, because here we've got quite a lot of sun, and then further back towards where the pizza oven is, there it's really dark. So making a panorama or even making a regular photo, it's going to really challenge the camera. Phone cameras are really amazing at balancing light, but particularly with a panorama where you've got one bright area and a darker section, it's not going to give you a nice even exposure on the whole thing. So I'll make sure to document both of those, the bright area and the dark area, in single photos as well, because then that way the photos are going to be better exposed. So let me come back out of there and do a horizontal image showing where this healthy tree is and where the other one is that wasn't so healthy that I took it out, because it was just here in this area here, and it was too much shade coming from this tree, and I didn't want that. And because of that shade, the poor tree just wasn't getting enough light, and it was really struggling. It was maybe a quarter of the size of this one. So I've moved it down the back where it's got a bit more sunlight, or a lot more sunlight actually. So there's the pizza oven photographed, and now here's probably one of the most changeable areas of our garden, one of my favourites, because it's my vegetable garden, our vegetable garden here. So this area through the year tends to change a fair amount, and I will definitely need to document that fairly well. So I'll take a few still photos. This is my hyperbolic paraboloid with a very big white basil growing in it, and I've just recently cleared underneath it because I will be growing some zucchini in here when the seedlings are ready. I've got the seedlings planted and they're coming up nicely. They're looking pretty strong, and we'll get them growing up through this structure here, which is quite a wonderful structure. It's very strong, so it should do well. And let me think about where the best angle is and the best lighting. So as I'm walking around taking the photographs, as I said up there, if you've got areas that are too bright or too dark, then it's going to really challenge your camera. So it's important to think about creating photos where you don't have too much sky backlighting your subject. Like, I'm backlit at the moment, the sky's so bright, I'm very, very dark, and the garden's bright. So that's not so good for the video, but for the photos for the garden, it's fine, as long as the camera's going to expose it well. So again, I'll just start around to the right and then swing around to the left to make this panorama showing a good deal of the vegetable garden. But what that panorama is not doing is showing you my vegetables down here. I've got some salad vegetables, I've got some chard and things like that. So I will turn my camera horizontally, turn my phone horizontally, and make a panorama vertically. So this will show what's in the foreground, the vegetable in the background a bit, and then the tomato TP and our papaya there that's got lots of fruit on it, which I'm very happy about. We haven't managed to have a good set of papaya growing for a while, a good tree with papaya growing for a while, but you'll see that we're remedying that. We've got some further down the back. This tree here behind me is a little bit older and is now beginning to give us some really nice fruit. And here I've got my comfrey, got 5 or 6 comfrey plants in there, and they are growing really well, and I'm very keen to document those to see how well they grow, how well they take, because I've not grown it before and I wasn't sure how well they would do here in this hot climate in northern Thailand. Okay, I'll come down the end of the vegetable garden now with the first teepee that I made, and I think I'll do a regular horizontal. That's not a panorama. Switch the mode and just make another panorama here of this end of the vegetable garden. Again, nothing under the teepee yet, that's waiting for tomatoes that are growing. And then that end section I planted the other day, I've got the bamboo so that the dogs won't run over it, hopefully, because they were. That's I've got corn planted in here. So it looks like some of that might just be starting to come up, which I'm happy about. Then I'll come to this high point up here, which is right at the edge of our section. So just back here is our neighbour's rice fields that he's harvested just the other day. The rice is still sitting there. They'll be coming to thresh that soon. And then I will have a look to photograph a nice wide panorama of all this area down here. This is where we used to have our pond, and so this has changed significantly. Quite a number of years ago we filled it in, but it's still just been a slow progress to change down here. We've tried a few different things, but we've planted a lot down here recently, so I will be very keen to document this and see how it goes for the future. So along here we've got the chaya, the tree spinach, and the king's grass growing. The king's grass mainly along the top, which is still very weedy down here. I didn't get down there with the machine yesterday. I cleared the vegetable garden, but I want to let the king's grass strengthen and grow a little bit more. Can't see much of it here from here, but it is there. And then a lot of the chaya is growing really well, so I'm very happy about that. And then because that will just fill up that whole bank there, and I won't have to mow it and I won't have to weed it, and it will provide food for us. And so here's a couple more things here that I want to pay attention to because they're important ones. This is our manuka, some of which has done really well. Others have not done so well at all. I'll just get a couple of photos here showing that. A closer up, this one here is really struggling. It'll be difficult to see because there's not much of it. But then some of them here have got a little flower on there, so I'll come in and capture just to make sure that I'm recording that there are actually flowers on it, which is nice to see. And so that's really the fourth tip there for the vegetable garden area, is that it's really tracking the growth changes in the garden. And certainly also down where I pointed out the tree spinach, the chaya, and the king's grass there, that's all fresh, that's all new. That's going to be quite different the next time I come around to photograph it. And then other things like this is the area where I planted our bamboo meditation room, or prayer room if you like, down here a few years ago, and it is really been slow to take. So I have times I've documented it a number of times, and I'll do it again today, because although it's been slow and a bit disappointing, quite challenging, it is still growing, and I am really keen now to document the change so that it's got the dates on it when, because every time you take a photo, it's got the date stamp and the time stamp of when you recorded it. So this is very helpful for really being able to check the progress of how well your garden's growing or how it's struggling. So in this case, with this bamboo down here, it's been really struggling, but I've started to feed it quite a few months ago, feed it more than I had been before, and watering it more than we had it being watered before, and a lot of it is really starting to show fabulous signs of growth. So I'm a lot happier now with the way that this bamboo here is growing. So I'll just get a couple of still photos, or the standard photos, not the panorama. And then back over here, we've got the moringa trees, and I don't think I've photographed these before. I may have done, but they would have been a lot smaller than this. When I put them in the ground, they were pretty tiny, and they have grown really rapidly. So we'll check on these. And then also down here we have got some papaya, some more papaya that were planted at a different time than these ones. So I'll document these little papaya as well. And then this licorice plant, there's a caterpillar on there. I can see its poop. And the caterpillars love this. I'll have to see if I can come out later and deal with that. I love it too. Got such a wonderful aroma and flavour to it. And then further down the back here, I will come and take a couple of images of my blackberry frame down here, which is again another newish planting, and they're beginning to look really healthy, looking really nice. And then of course, even though I've photographed this area from the other angle, I'll do it again from here, again just with a couple of regular photos, and then I will do another panorama down here, because again it's such a wide field of view that the panorama is just the best for capturing it. But like I was saying before, you can use a panorama either horizontally like this or vertically, and it doesn't need to be always in such a wide space. Sometimes if you've got a narrower space that you can't quite get everything in because your phone format that it takes the photos in isn't suited to the space that you're photographing it, then you can make a panorama of the area rather than just taking a single still image. I'll come back down here to the papaya from the other view. And do another panorama here. And down here with these papaya, the papaya don't last forever. They're a fairly quick growing plant that will provide an abundance of fruit, or none at all, depending if they're male or female. And so this is another good thing for planning, and for future planning we want to be able to see how things grow, how well they grow, so that we can look at what else we can plant in this area or in any particular area in the garden in the future. So having documented each season for a number of years, then we're able to look back and then help us to plan for the future. We can see what grows well where and what doesn't grow very well, so that we can then plan as to what to plant when things like the papaya die off. We'll have a better idea of what's going to grow here than we would have done if we didn't take any photographs. Hope that makes sense. And then another area here, I'll come through here now. This is an area that's been sadly reasonably neglected for quite a time, but I will still document it because that's important to see what's going on. So I'll start around this way. This is our cacti area, and it's just during the rainy season it's really not possible to do anything with them at all because of they don't like being grafted, or it's not healthy to graft them during the rainy season because they get too much bacteria and mold. I've not chosen the right angle for this because it's just too bright in the background. So this is really important to think about when you're photographing somewhere where there's a bright area behind. So even though I'll be a little bit lower to the ground because it's a bit of a step down there, I won't get such a good view of them, of the cacti, but you'll notice it when I bring this camera up, that there is better lighting here now for a panorama or for any photo, because instead of the bright sun behind, I've got our beautiful bamboo behind it, so it's going to actually show off what's there better because the camera is not struggling so much with the contrast. And this is something I often encourage people if I'm teaching them photography, is to be really aware that the images that the camera makes are made generally in a split second, or in this case, using panorama images, but they're made with one exposure, and that exposure is not as smart as our eyes are and our brains are to really capture the contrast and lighting. So in the dark areas under the table, it's not going to give us much detail because we've got that bright area of sky up there in the image, so it's not going to see it so well as our eyes do. Looking at the image through there with my phone, I can see the detail here, and I can see it reasonably well in the sky, but the foreground's quite dark. But if I angle the phone down so that you're not seeing, it's not including the sky, then I'm going to get a better exposure all around in the foreground, which is where I want it. Still very bright in the background, but when I'm looking at it with my eyes, I can see quite clearly the detail under the table, I can see the detail on top of the table, and I can see the detail in the sky, the bright blue sky and the lovely white fluffy clouds. But especially on a phone camera, it's just not going to have the quality of sensor to be able to capture that tone range from the dark area to the bright area all in one image. Whereas if I'm using a higher quality camera, it's going to have a better chance that it could record it reasonably well, but still they are way more limited than our eyes are. Our eyes are absolutely incredible when it comes to really balancing and being able to see the tone range, and our eyes and our brains are dynamically adjusting all the time, whereas when we take a photo, that's it. It's only going to be one exposure. You've got it clear in one area, maybe it's going to be well exposed to show the cacti on the tables here, but not the sky, or it's going to show the sky nicely and then the cacti are going to be too dark. So you just got to think about these things when you're taking photos, particularly today when you're looking at taking photos in the garden, because you're quite often going to get a reasonable amount of sky and therefore a lot of contrast in the images. So as I'm walking around, I'm looking at the angles and thinking about where the best angle is, not only so the subject looks most interesting and captures the essence of what I'm photographing, to document it well, but also to light it well. So I haven't taken many photos of my compost bins, so I better do that because they're reasonably new. Don't need the panorama here, but I'll do one higher up and then one a little bit lower down to show the bamboo up there, and photograph this area here because that's where we had all our rice straw last year. This year I think it's going to stay in our neighbour's field until I need it, and I'll just be able to get it and use it as I can, as I need to. And so here we are down in this bottom area. We call this our mango orchard. We've got a lot of mango trees in here, and sorry, I'm going to keep adjusting my little camera. It's coming a bit loose on its mount there. But there you go, this is mango trees, and here is, yeah, I'm a little concerned about this one here. It's got a bunch of dead leaves on it, and it looks like it's got some termites or something crawling up the trunk. So I'll go over and get a closer up photo of this because this is the type of thing that it's important to keep a track of, because all of this is not good. Yeah, there's a bunch of ants in there and stuff, so I'm going to need to come and take a closer look at that. And then some bunches of dead leaves in there. I'm not sure what that's from. I might have to go and ask one of my neighbours who grows mangoes. I've got photographs on my phone of what the problem is, then I can just talk to him about it and show him, and hopefully he will be able to share some insight as to what that might be, and what, more importantly, what we might be able to do to alleviate the problem. So again, back to panorama mode. I'll capture this section of our garden we like to call our mango orchard. We've got other things in there. We've got some tomatoes growing really nicely in there, and an avocado tree and a few other trees in here. But it gets fairly wet down here. It's fairly soggy down, and particularly in this area just here, in the rainy season, because it's very low. And we've found that the mangoes quite like that. They don't mind having wet feet. So I'll come out of panorama mode now and photograph my teepee from a few different angles. Got different things growing in there. We've got a papaya on this side of it, and the tomatoes that are growing quite nicely. I tied those up again the other day, and I'm so pleased. We've got some passion fruit that I've really struggled to grow in the past. I've grown them a few times and they just haven't come to much, but these ones are looking really good. They were getting really badly eaten by snails, but I've put my snail bait down there and it's dealing with them nicely. They seem to be leaving my passion fruit alone. They were also eating the papaya there as well for a while, but they seem to be have been moved on, hopefully as a result of my efforts to deal with them. So again, another panorama. This is an area that is currently being worked on. I'm clearing these baskets, and around these baskets we've had various things growing in them. Now I've got some chili and some tamarillo and some papaya growing in them, but it's an area that hasn't worked so well down here because we'd put some of the weed mat, the plastic weed mat on the ground to try and control the weeds, and it did for a while, but the rice seed just tends to get scattered all over, and it grows up through the weed mat really easily, and then trying to cut it, trying to especially work with it with the machine, catch a little bit of that weed mat in your weed whacker. That's a hard one to say. Catch the weed mat in the weed whacker, and it just gets tangled up and snails the whole machine. So it's a bit of a pain in the butt. And I've really decided I don't like putting that much plastic over the ground in our garden because I'm sure it's not doing the soil any good at all. So I'll move away from that. And then we've got another little area here that we've planted recently. A couple of things in there that I'll photograph. How's that gone on to selfie mode? I don't want a selfie. So some new plantings, and then we'll come back up here. Even the back of my shed I'm going to photograph because it's a significant part of the garden that I don't actually like looking at. But if I photograph how ugly it is from time to time, then it is going to remind me what works and what doesn't. So I've actually just cleaned it up a bit from how it had been, and we had quite a few pots and things like that just sort of scattered in here. I did have a compost bin in there that's now got the piece of black bamboo planted in there, and the storage for my my cut bamboo and pots and stuff in our old worm farm in there. So it's just good to keep a record of where these things are and how we're managing it, what we're doing with it. And so there's another tip of just photographing every aspect of the garden so you can see really what's working and what's not working. As I said, this area down the back here, it's a very, very useful piece of our garden. I love my garden shed. I love my work area on the other side of it, but it's pretty ugly. I don't like to see it. We've planted the bamboo here. We've planted other stuff around it to try and hide it from the vision of our customers, particularly when we have customers coming in. And by taking a few photos of it every now and again, it'll just help us to see what's working and what is maybe not working so well in the garden. And so then, yeah, come on down here just quickly, have a look. I am adamant to get this sorted out soon. This is a stockpile of wood for our pizza oven. This is from the prunings from a couple of months ago, so it needs to just dry out. And then, yeah, the back of the shed and my workshop space, which I really enjoy, but also is open to change from time to time, and the way it's organised and how we manage it. And now I'm going to take you up to my absolute favourite part of the garden, and that is the bamboo that lines our driveway. And this is one of the things that I've enjoyed photographing the very most since we've been growing it, because it is just absolutely beautiful. Look at that, it is quite magical, and definitely need the panorama angle for this. But amazing, it's quite a lot darker at the top than it is at the bottom, so I'll do another one there as well. But just here I've got a very bright area, so I'm going to walk forward, and as I stand here, that's eliminated a lot of that bright area. And just readjust my exposure on my phone and make another panorama. So I'll include both of those on the video, because I think it's quite a significant difference in the lighting there, because of the first one having this very, very bright patch here included, and so when I panned up, the top of the bamboo looked very, very dark. So the second time I took my exposure, let my phone, I'm exposing it automatically on my phone, just a very basic setting, take the exposure from up there, but once you've started to record, the exposure's locked in, so as you move your camera from either up or down or left to right to make the panorama, then that exposure doesn't change. So it's really important to try and capture the light well when you're photographing your garden, to be able to give a really good representation of the colours and the tones of your foliage and of your flowers. So there's another tip there. Think about your exposures, think about your black or your dark areas and your bright areas, and try and frame your exposures, trying to compose so that your exposures are going to be nice and even, rather than having areas that are very bright and very dark in the same image, because you're just not going to capture that tone range with your phone. So down at the top, or up here at the top, I will do the same thing again, because it's a quite a different angle. So you can even, like, angling the phone right up, pointing almost straight up above me now, but it will still make quite a nice panorama image. And then I'm going to take another panorama from this side, just a little bit of a different angle, so that I'm not going to get the shed in the photo, or at least not so much of it, but just capture the beauty of the bamboo as it is. And then this area here outside our kitchen is another nice little spot that is kind of changing. So in the future we're probably going to put our turtles in this area. We've got a few little turtles, but as they grow they're going to need a bit of space. And this area here gets used as a bit of an unloading zone. We've got our 20-baht baskets over here that we've used for a lot of our seedlings or smaller plants. That the papaya that we planted down the back were all started in these, and also the Thai herbs that we've put out at the front now were planted in these. So they've just kind of been left there. They need waiting for something else to get put in them. And then we'll get other things when we come back from the garden centre with new potting mix and stuff like that. It often just gets placed here until it gets relocated somewhere else. But there it is. There is a nice look at our garden, and a few tips and encouragements of why you should keep your phone handy sometimes and take photos just take photos just from day to day as you're doing your gardening. It's always good to take a few extra pictures. Quite often I'll get my big camera, I'll get my DSLR out and just walk around the garden, especially to photograph the bamboo because I love doing that, but all sorts of other plants in the garden, either just for documentary photos or to make nice pictures. If you've got pretty flowers, if you've got beautiful texture in the bark, things like that, you might even like to frame some of your pictures and hang them on the wall inside so you can remind yourself to get up and go and do some gardening sometimes. So there is a bit of a walk around and encouragement to photograph your garden from time to time, to document it during the different seasons of the year, and from year in and year out it'll build up a really good history of your garden that you'll be able to use and look back on to see how your garden's changed. And remember too that every time you take a photo, it's recording the date and the time, so you'll be able to access that information and really help you see and understand better how your garden's growing and what you might need to do to keep it growing better, or to design it differently, or to look after the healthier plants in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please check out this video next to find out more about how much we love our garden here at Suansock Homestay. Thank you very much for watching.